as Doris Burke has kindly done. She gets set to call the NBA Finals on television alongside Mike Breen and JJ Redick. Look forward to that analysis and this chat. Good to see you, Doris Burke. How are you?
I'm great. That just gave me such joy. And I have to tell you a story that JJ Redick shared, who spent a minute in Dallas right at the end of his career.
Yes.
And of course, we want to know what Luka's like. You know, he's such an incredible player,
yes,
but brilliant. But I said, JJ, what's he like? He goes, the most normal guy who wants no drama. He wants to have a beer with his friends. He wants the locker room to be drama-free. And he goes, the guy outside the lines versus the guy inside the lines, two totally different things. And you love who he is in both places. So that video is just too great.
Yeah, the one where Michael Finley comes over and sees him having a beer with his dad after sealing the deal and winning the Magic Johnson Award, and you just took it from him. And then Luka's just like, where are you going with that? All right, okay.
I'll get room service.
It's so great. I mean, because what do you think? Is Michael like concerned about conditioning, or there's more games to be played, right? I mean, like that was funny. That was really funny.
Classic.
I know. So, what do you think happens now in the finals, Doris? What do you think of this matchup here?
I am so excited for this, Rich. You know, you have the Boston Celtics, who have by far have been the most dominant team from the opening tip of the season. The additions of Drew and Kristaps Porzingis have fit like a glove. And I do think, and we can sort of dive into this a little bit, but Kristaps has to play for them to win. And then you have the Dallas Mavericks, who feel to me, and I don't know what your take on this is, Rich, but you remember Steph Curry's last title, where they had scuffled to start the year, but they found their traction and hit their stride at exactly the right time. That, to me, feels like the Dallas Mavericks. And we need to give Nico Harrison a ton of credit, because early in the year, this team had to outscore people, and they were going absolutely nowhere. No one would have been shocked at the Dallas Mavericks had they stood pat, would have been a first-round series exit. And now, all of a sudden, you put this incredible amount of athleticism and defensive toughness around the two best closers in the game, in Kyrie and Luka. And look out, you've got a potent foe for the Boston Celtics.
So you said a couple things there that I want to touch base on. First one, you think Porzingis has to play for the Celtics to win? That's your belief here?
It is, and Rich, and I'll tell you why. Because what have Gafford and Lively done for the Dallas Mavericks? Number one, on the defensive end, incredible rim protection. And the two best players, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, are both dynamic drivers who make tremendous rim reads and put a ton of pressure on you. And so Gafford and Lively are critical on the defensive end for the Dallas Mavericks. They also are vertical threats at the rim for two guys who understand how to attack and find people. So there's pressure at the rim, and there's shooters on either side of both guys. So that's their influence on both ends is significant. I was just watching the tape of the March matchup between these two teams. Sorry, I just lost my AirPod. I was just watching the matchup from March when both teams are, as presently constituted. And the most striking thing I saw in that film, Rich, is Kristaps Porzingis picking and popping and pick and roll action. And so what does that do? That makes Lively and Gafford come out. You draw away that rim protection. You draw away that rebounding threat because you've got to cover. I think Kristaps Porzingis on threes averages about 27 feet per field goal attempt. And that was, it's my first run through of that matchup on tape, but that was the thing that was really striking to me. And let's remember, Kristaps on the defensive end is holding opponents to like 44% at the rim. He will post a mismatch. If you happen to get him in a switch, he's going to punish that switch. His post-up opportunities were one of the most effective and efficient plays in the entire NBA. I think they would have a hard time winning the series. And listen, he hasn't played since game 4 of the Miami series. So what does he look like? It's one of the most compelling storylines as we start this playoff this matchup.
And then you mentioned the defensive prowess of Dallas that the Mavericks identified was necessary. Do me a favor and give me some folks that you mean, actual players, and how they might match up against the Celtics starting Thursday night with you at the mic on ABC, Doris?
Yeah, so this is the biggest test for this Dallas defense that has vastly improved. And to me, one of the most striking aspects of the PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and Derrick Jones Jr., can we remember that I don't think Derrick Jones Jr. had a lot of suitors. He didn't sign with the Dallas Mavericks, I believe, until August maybe. And yet he is a starter on an NBA Finals team and nightly absorbing an incredibly difficult matchup. And a couple of things have happened that are important. Luka and Kyrie are playing as hard and as engaged on the defensive end of the floor as we've ever seen them, and for the longest stretches we've ever seen them. But nobody covering this series, I don't think it's going to say, oh, those are two elite defensive players, right? So there's still some opportunities for this talented Boston team to attack. But the thing I think most is something Jason Kidd told us in one of our coaches' meetings. And this is important, and this is why fit and chemistry and the vibe of this team is important. Derrick Jones Jr., Daniel Gafford, PJ, they relish the fact that they can cover up and support maybe some of the pieces around them that aren't as good defensively. Maxi Kleber's return is enormous for two reasons. Maxi is one of the most outstanding defensive players in the league, really smart, cross-positional, and he has a knack for making big three-point shots, and that spacing is critical. So there's any number of defensive players. Josh Green off the bench, the ability to apply ball pressure. Can you use your depth a little bit if you're Dallas? So this is the biggest test. Boston was the most efficient offensive team in the league. They put shooting on the floor at all five positions in almost every lineup they run out there. So this, I'm telling you, I'm so excited. And then there's the delicious storylines. Kyrie leaves Boston. It doesn't feel very good when he leaves. That fan base is not happy. Kristaps Porzingis' time in Dallas didn't work out well. How motivated is he if he's healthy and well and can participate? Like, there's so many things happening here. Yeah,
I know. And by the way, you definitely were putting a nice silver lining on it. It didn't feel good when Kyrie left, and Boston fans are not happy. Those that's a very sunny disposition way of looking at it, Doris. But you're right. And then there's the whole sense of the Celtics trying to get back to the mountaintop. It has been a while, and clearly the Mavericks trying to do something that nobody expected them to do. And then there's just the players that you didn't expect to be in the NBA Finals. I'll ask you this question. When did PJ Washington become Robert Horry? When did that happen, Doris?
It's a great point because, I was looking at his stats like all season from 3-point territory. He's only in the regular season in the 29 games he played with them, only a 31.4% 3-point shooter. But it feels like his baskets are loud baskets. And when the ball finds him in a swing situation because teams are doubling or blitzing, Luka, and they don't necessarily want to come off of Kyrie because of the big shot making, well, the ball's going to find those other guys. And what impresses me is how fearless PJ Washington is. And there's an edge about him, right, Rich? Like, there's an edge, a defensive toughness, okay, you can bring it. At this stage, I will be unbowed. And Luka, here's a guy who's played since he was 13 years of age. He played professional basketball at 13. He wins the MVP of the league at 18, playing against 29, 30, guys much older than him. This team fits well. There's a toughness about them. But Boston's their biggest challenge. There's no question because Boston has been complete both ends.
Other than these teams, who is the best team you saw all season, Doris? That didn't make it. What do you think here?
Yeah, I was shocked at the way the Minnesota season came to a thunderous end. Like just having worked so hard to get the spacing right with Karl-Anthony Towns, with Anthony Edwards emerging as the superstar on this stage and showing moments of absolute brilliance. and the Rudy Gobert storyline just remains polarizing. I was shocked. That it came to such an abrupt and ugly ending for a Minnesota team that really had a hell of a season. Truth be told, they had one heck of a year.
Doris Burke here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few minutes left with you, Doris. If you wouldn't mind just taking a moment out of this conversation to talk about yourself a little bit. You have called the NBA Finals on ESPN Radio since 2020, but this is TV. You are you got a big assignment for you and your career, obviously, but for so many people who can follow you, Doris. You are the first woman to be at the microphone on television for a men's major finals in the United States in the history of our medium, and I'm wondering if that's hit you in any way, shape, or form.
Well, thank you for making me more nervous than I already am.
You
Rich.
shouldn't be, Doris. You're nervous is not the honestly. You're outstanding. You're awesome. So let's just remove that from the equation if we can.
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's meaningful. There's no doubt that sentiment hasn't dawned on me. Obviously, like what could be better for me if in some way this assignment helps women. In some way, there could be nothing more meaningful, right? Like they're just, and I can't help but think about so many women, like even my predecessors, whether it's Jackie McMullen or watching the brilliant Candace Parker work in so many spheres, business, television, all the women behind the scenes at ESPN who love the sport and grind it out, local beat writers, somebody like Caitlin Cooper, who does an incredible job in new media covering the Pacers. Like, if this helps, I am thrilled. But, like what I've done my entire career is like, what's the next game I have? And how can I be best prepared and hopefully bring the viewer as close to the game as I love? And I know how fortunate I am to sit there. And it's funny, anybody calling their first finals game is going to be nervous. There's no question. So I'm going to try to just put that other side, that thought aside so that I can because that would be overwhelming. And Mike Breen, I've worked with him for so long, Rich, so long. And over the years, I've heard him tell this story about his first NBA finals game as the play-by-play. And now he's iconic and he's, synonymous with the sport. But he's calling the game next to the great Hubie Brown. Mm-hmm. And he's nervous or whatever's happening. He goes, we go to break. And Hubie just looks at him, makes him take off his headset, puts his hand on his arm and said, "Kid, just call the damn game." And
I love it. I love it.
I hope I can just settle in and call the damn game. And I'm working with two extraordinary gentlemen. JJ Redick has been a phenomenal teammate. Mike Breen is the master of the position. And we have, this because you were once with us, we have the best of the best at every position. Graphics tape, producer, director. And, we're going to try to do the job as well as we can. That's for sure.
No doubt. And listen, I mean, you go back with Breen, I'm sure, to the MSG days when you were with MSG doing the Knicks before you joined ESPN. And this is not your first NBA Finals. You've been doing that at the radio mic for the great ESPN radio since 2020. And and plus, I mean, the chair that you're in was previously occupied by another star Big East point guard. So I guess that's your role here. You know what I mean? Like you have everything that's necessary, and I just wanted to point that out. And in terms of your college career, 4 years in Providence. If there was a WNBA then, Doris, would you have gone into it? Would you have played in the WNBA?
I'm not sure I was good enough, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right.
I had a chance to go overseas when my career ended. And my final game my senior year at Providence, where we were playing in the WNIT, and I had played 3 games in 3 days, was a heavy minutes. And literally the last 10 minutes of my career, we were a running team. I go to catch an outlet pass and turn and spin to get in transition, and I blow my knee, both ligaments. And the surgeon right after said, "You need to make a decision. Are you going to go, or because it's going to impact the kind of surgery I perform?" And I sort of took that as a sign, like, I wasn't going to make very much money over there. And but no, to be honest, I don't think I was good enough. I could get anywhere I wanted off the dribble drive, Rich, but I was not a great shooter, so they always sagged off me. But I will say this, like, I'm always indebted to the WNBA. It's 1997 when that was formed. I was in the business, but that was the first time a woman as an analyst, so doing what Raft or Dick Vitale or, any analyst in basketball was doing, and that's make a living as a color analyst. I could do like 35 games of the WNBA and then 35 games of women's college basketball. And I was saying the last game that we were on, I'm listening to Chris Paul back in the studio teasing our halftime, and I'm sitting next to JJ Redick. I'm thinking, oh my God, I covered Chris as a freshman, his first game in Madison Square Garden at Wake, and I covered JJ as a freshman at Duke. I looked at my friend, I go, I am so old, it's frightening.
No, you are experienced, Doris. Let's call it that. Before I let you go, I'm going to throw a dart here and hope it hits the bullseye. Do you have a good Bill Walton story? Anything from your history with Bill, Doris?
Yeah. So my first analyst game for ESPN in the playoffs was completely by accident. I believe it was Tom Tolbert, but I'm not 100% sure. Mm-hmm. The noon game on that first Saturday was up in Toronto. And Tom, I believe it was Tom, was assigned to that game and his passport had expired or something. So they sent me up last minute. And I don't know Bill at the time. And I just texted this to Luke and expressing my condolences to him. I didn't know Bill at the time, but he had tracked down my email via ESPN and sent me this incredibly long, thoughtful, that was absolutely incredible. You have, I don't even remember exactly, but I texted Luke. I mean, to me, Bill Walton, if he doesn't have the foot injuries, would have been a top 10 player all time. I mean, I know he's on the 75th anniversary team, but just an incredible, incredible player. So I never forgot that email. There've been so many people who have built my confidence over time, players, coaches, whatever, saying a word or two here and there that was timely, that helped me feel like, okay, you can do this. And I'm Bill Walton because of that note that he sent me, that he clearly went out of the way. He's just an incredible human being.
So you're saying your first NBA on ESPN playoff
that's correct.
Assignment
playoff game
was last minute because Tom Tolbert had passport issues. And you call the game and Bill watched it, took it in, and just reached out?
Bill watched it, didn't know me, but knew I was an employee of ESPN, obviously got my email from somebody and wrote me the most beautiful note about the job I had done and the meaning behind the job I had done. And I thought, Bill Walton took the time, number one, to watch the game, which he's going to watch. He was an enormous basketball fan, of course. But then to take time to reach out to a colleague of his who he didn't know, who was scared, to death about the job I had done. And yet you get one of the iconic figures in the sport reaching out to you. So, and then every time I saw him, big hug, laughs. There's a picture of us. He joined us. Dave Pash and I were calling the anniversary of their, championship team in Portland. He came over and joined the broadcast. There's a picture of him. It looks like he's sitting on my lap. He's not sitting on my lap. He's sitting on a stool.
Right.
Somebody sent me the picture the other day, but he was just vivacious and full of life and kind-hearted and, a man of such character. And I was thrilled for the brief interactions I had with him.
Well, I'm sure his spirit will be there next Thursday in Boston for sure for an NBA Finals tip-off. And I can't wait to watch you and listen to you. You're great watch and listen with Mike and JJ, Doris. You really are. And I look forward to it. And hopefully maybe, we'll have you back on during the finals, if not after. Appreciate it.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You be well, Doris. That's Doris Burke, everybody, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.